I'm going to be speaking today about the regathering of the 12 tribes of Israel and the second greater Exodus. We see that the first Exodus was a shadow of the second Exodus or greater Exodus that will come, which is a future event. Jeremiah 16 and Jeremiah 23 tell us how great this will be. It says, "It will no longer be said, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the sons of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but as Yahweh lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of the north and from all the countries where he had banished them. For I will restore unto them their own land, which I gave to their fathers." So the second greater Exodus will far eclipse the first Exodus. We see that there was a scattering. The first time that this is shown in the Torah is in Deuteronomy 4:26 through 29. It's reiterated in Deuteronomy 28:64. I'm not going to read that one today, but Deuteronomy 4:26 through 29 says, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you will soon utterly perish from the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days in it, but will be utterly destroyed. And Yahweh will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where Yahweh will drive you. And there you will serve gods, the works of man's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But from there you will seek Yahweh your Elohim, and you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul." There's a promise of a regathering a few chapters later in Deuteronomy 30:1 through 6. And it reads, "And it shall be when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before you, and you shall bring them back to your heart among the Gentiles," and Gentiles are nations or goyim, "where Yahweh your Elohim drives you, and shall turn back to Yahweh your Elohim, and obey his voice according to all that I command you today, with all your heart and with all your being, you and your children. Then Yahweh your Elohim shall turn back your captivity, and shall have compassion on you, and he shall turn back and gather you from all the peoples where Yahweh your Elohim has scattered you. If any of you are driven out to the farthest parts under the heavens, from there Yahweh your Elohim does gather you, and from there he does take you. And Yahweh your Elohim shall bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And he shall do good to you, and increase you more than your fathers. And Yahweh your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, so that you might live." Now we see that in the first Exodus, there were about 2 to 3 million people who left Egypt. It's recorded in Numbers 1, 603,550 men that were 20 years and older, and that did not include the women and the children and those under 20 years of the men. We see that in the greater Exodus, there's going to be a much larger group. From nations all over the world, there will be a remnant. And Zechariah 13:9 describes a little bit of what that will be like. He says, "I will bring into the fire, refine them like silver, and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them." Now, they were in bondage, and they're going to be in bondage again in the second greater Exodus when he sends freedom. Exodus 1:14 records, "And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor." In the second greater Exodus, Jeremiah 30 verse 8 says, "In that day," anytime you see "in that day," it's speaking of the final generation, the last days, the end times. Declares Yahweh Almighty, "I will break the yoke off their necks, and I will tear off their bonds. No longer will foreigners enslave them." We know in the first Exodus, Israelites were ransomed from the hand of someone stronger, and that was Egypt. In the second greater exodus, they will also be ransomed from someone stronger. Jeremiah 31:11 records, "For Yahweh will deliver Jacob and redeem them from the hand of those stronger than they." Now, there's several verses that I want you to note what's highlighted here in this second regathering. And it's these words, "a great multitude," because they're going to show up later. Jeremiah 31, verse 8, "Behold, I am bringing them from the north country, and I will gather them from the remote parts of the earth, among them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, she who is in labor with child, together. A great multitude, they will return here." And Revelation 7:9, now this is a little bit of someone's commentary added to this. "After this I looked, and there was before me a great multitude that no one could count, the scattered tribes of Yasharel, gathered from every nation, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands." We know that in the first Exodus, one nation was pulled out of another nation. Israel was pulled from Egypt. We know that Abraham also was pulled out of Babylon. But we see in the greater Exodus, the people are going to be pulled out from many nations all over the world. Isaiah 43:6 records, "I will gather you and your children from east and west and from north and south. I will bring my daughters and sons back to Israel from the distant corners of the earth." Jeremiah 32:37 reiterates, "I will surely bring my people back again from all the countries where I will scatter them in my fury. I will bring them back to this very city and let them live in peace and safety." And you notice I'm not reading everything, just what I've highlighted, but I'm leaving enough time on these slides for you to go back. And I will give credit at the end for the one who produced this article. Here's one. I'm not going to read any, but for if you want to go back and read all of this later for a deeper study, it's here. We know in the first Exodus, Yahweh parted the Red Sea. And there were many other miraculous signs and wonders that took place during that time. In the second greater Exodus, many scholars say that he will part every ocean and every sea necessary to get his people home. Isaiah 11:15-16 says, "For Yahweh will devote to destruction the gulf of the sea of Egypt. With a scorching wind he will sweep his hand over the Euphrates. He will split it into 7 streams," and some believe that means oceans, "for men to cross with dry sandals. There will be a highway for the remnant of his people who remain from Assyria, as there was from Egypt, and they came up from the land of Egypt." So we see that these people from the nations will also be leaving this world, new world order, this Babylonian system that is now coming about. We know that in the first Exodus, when Israel left Egypt, they were one kingdom, one family, one people. But in the greater Exodus, there's got to be a healing of a fractured kingdom that's going to take place, because what we have now is the northern and the southern tribes. And so when they return to the land of their forefathers, they're going to be reunited into one kingdom. And Jeremiah 30:1-3 records, "For behold, the days are coming, saith the Yahweh, that I will bring back from captivity my people Israel and Judah." Notice he's naming 2 different people, because mostly what's in the land today is Judah and some of the tribe of Levi. But Israel are the 10 tribes who have been scattered to the nations. And we're going to look at that in a few slides down to see exactly what happened there. They lost their identity, and they have to come back into the covenant. And Jeremiah 31:3 says, "And I will cause them to return to the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall possess it." Ezekiel 37:19, he says, "I'm going to take the stick of Joseph, which is in Ephraim's hand." Now, Ephraim and Joseph represent the 10 tribes. And they were the northern kingdom that was taken captivity by Assyria, and they completely assimilated into the nations and lost their identity. But Ephraim was the leader of those 10 tribes, and that's why a lot of times in the scriptures you will see the word Ephraim to represent the 10 tribes. And so he's going to take that stick, and reading on, and the Israelite tribes with him, and join it to Judah's stick. See again, two different people with the Israelites with him, making them one single stick of wood in my hand. That's Ezekiel 37:19. And the word stick is really a mistranslation. It's the word etz, and it's better translated as tree, because it's referring to the olive tree that is spoken of in Romans 11, where it says some of the branches are broken off, speaking of Judah, because of unbelief, and so that the others can come in. And this is what he's doing. He's going to take two peoples and bring them back together as one nation, one people. The only thing I wanted to show on this slide is that from Zechariah 12, 2 through 9, what I have highlighted, Yahweh will save the tents of Judah first. And that's exactly what has happened. In 1948, there began an aliyah back to the land, but it was mostly the tribe of Judah that was going back, because these other tribes had not yet been waked up, and they don't have access to go back at this time. And so I just wanted to point out that Judah's exodus came first, and they're still being gathered. Ezekiel 20, 27 to 44. This is speaking to the house of Israel. And this whole chapter is excellent, speaking about the greater exodus and what will happen during this time. I'm just going to read some of the sections of this. But I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered with a mighty hand, with an outstretched arm, and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples. That may be the wilderness of the nations. And there I will plead my case with you face to face, just as I pleaded my case with you, with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So I will plead my case with you. I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. All the house of Israel, all of them, when I bring you out from the peoples, and that's from the nations, and gather you out of the countries wherein you have been scattered, I will be hallowed in you before the Gentiles. And more on this passage later. Now ask yourself, why did Yahweh have to take Israel into the desert, and why would he need to take us into the wilderness at a future time? Well, the original Exodus, he took them out because he was betrothing himself to this people on Mount Sinai. When the 10 words were given, that was actually a ketubah. That was the marriage covenant vows. And Israel said, all that Yahweh has said we will do. We know that they failed miserably. Now, this all of what happened in the wilderness travels and time there were to prepare his bride for the wedding. The wedding will take place at the greater Exodus. I believe it's on the Day of Atonement, and the wedding feast will be at the Feast of Tabernacles after that. These are the fall feasts that most of the church doesn't understand or celebrate, most of your mainstream churches today. But these are spoken of a lot in the parables in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, and we should be keeping these feasts because they're appointed times. And the wedding feast is when Messiah will show up, and he will take his bride, and his bride is going to rule and reign with him for the 1,000-year millennial kingdom. So we want to be rehearsing for this wedding and these feasts, and be obedient to what he's told his people to do. And this is just this. I'm not going to read any on this slide, but just to tell you that basically it's saying that we can't stay in our homes during this time and think that we're going to be protected and think that we're going to ride it out. There's going to be a great wrath coming down on the earth because of the wickedness. and the protection is going to be supernatural that's coming. In the wilderness, the second greater Exodus, there's going to be great wonders that he's going to show, as in the days of old. He said, I will show them wonders. The nations shall see and be ashamed of all their might. They shall put their hand over their mouth. Their ears shall be deaf. So he's going to give truth to Jacob and mercy to Abraham. So we want to be a part of that. That's the desire of our hearts. Micah 7:14 through 20. In the wilderness, again, in the second greater Exodus, you're going to see similarities to the first Exodus. We've already said there will be a parting of the waters, probably the 7 seas, which are the 7 oceans. Pillars of fire and smoke. We will see all of that again. Joel, that's in the book of Joel. That you see these verses are spread all through the Tanakh, the Old Testament. They're everywhere where we're seeing what this is going to look like and how it's going to take place. And I venture to say most people that are in mainstream Christianity have never heard a sermon on the second greater Exodus. But I don't understand really why, because it's everywhere in the Word. Isaiah 4:3 through 6, again, reiterating that there's going to be incredibly wonderful things done. And we're going to see the fire by night and the pillar of fire by night and the cloud by day, all of these things. And Jeremiah 31:9, that they're going to come weeping, and he's going to lead them and he's going to give water to them during this time. He's going to lead them to the water. And he says in the end of that last slide, Ephraim is my firstborn. And we're going to see that in a slide a few down from here where that took place. In the wilderness, you're also going to see great wonders. And this is in the greater Exodus, Ezekiel 34. Incredible wonders and blessings will come down upon his people. He's going to deliver them from the hand of those who have enslaved them. Here it is where Jacob, if you remember, he told Joseph to bring his 2 sons, and those sons were Ephraim and Manasseh. And we know that Ephraim was the younger son. He is a picture of, it's the picture of the story of the prodigal son. Judah is the older son. And Ephraim was the one who wasted his inheritance. If you remember, he was given his inheritance and he went out and spent it. And he found himself waking up one day slopping with the pigs. And he said, I'll go home to my father and be a slave. But he was welcomed back. And then there was the what? There was the Feast of Tabernacles, the wedding feast that took place. That's what this is all speaking about. It's far more than just a father and his son being united from rebellion. It's speaking of the unification of this nation that's going to come together. And when Jacob pronounced the blessing, that's when he chose Ephraim to be the firstborn son. And what did he say to Ephraim? Because he represents these 10 tribes. He said, your descendants will become a multitude of nations, Goyim. And you got to understand, these 2 boys, their mother was Asenath. She was an Egyptian. So this is a picture of the strangers, the foreigners, the aliens becoming grafted into the people of Yah, and then becoming assimilated into the nations and losing their identity, and now they're being wakened up today. And all of this has taken place. Romans 11 tells us all this has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles or the nations has come in. These people are waking up today and understanding their identity and coming back to the covenants and coming back to his ways, the ancient paths. That's the call. Now, if you look at this picture, you see where Israel and Judah were divided. Israel was the northern kingdom. They became extremely rebellious, and they set up at Bethel and Dan, they set up bulls, and they were in idolatry, adultery, all kinds of things. And they were taken captive in 722 BC. And the Assyrians had a different way of handling their captives. They assimilated their peoples into the nations. And that's where they completely lost their identity. You can find their migration paths. There are people who have done great studies on this. For example, the tribe of Dan. If you think of the Danube River, it says Dan will be like a serpent in the way. Well, the Danube River, it wanders around and around like a serpent. And these kinds of things are helping us to understand their migration path of where these people went and where they ended up. We're going to talk a little bit later about, you can look at your the older family crest and see if you have a lineage in these people. The tribe of Judah below this, they were taken captive by Babylon in 586 BC, and they stayed there for 70 years, but we know that they were allowed to come home. A remnant of them did come back and rebuild the temple, and that was the temple that the Messiah came at the time he came to this earth. It was that second temple that group was there. And this is just a little picture of the Assyrian Empire at this time. And this shows you some of the names of the northern kingdom, or the house of Israel. They're in the Bible known as Ephraim, which I told you. Ephraim was the largest and probably the most prominent of these 10 tribes. And they're known as Joseph. Joseph was the father of Ephraim and Manasseh. And the house of Israel, Israelites, Gentiles, diaspora, house of Isaac, and lost sheep. Why did our Messiah say, I have come only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel? He said that because he was speaking of those 10 tribes that were scattered and lost, and he was coming to bring them back into the covenant, to provide a way that they could come back, because Yah had completely divorced the 10 tribes. They were no longer allowed access into the covenant. And the only way back was that someone had to die. This is written in the Torah. And so that's exactly what he did. That's why his last words on the cross or the tree were, it is finished. What was finished? His whole job was to come back to regather these people and to allow Gentiles or nations to come into the covenant. That was what he came to do. This is the Babylonian Empire. We've already spoken about that. And this is where Ezekiel 37 talks about these 2 sticks becoming 1 stick, and they're going to become one in his hand, one people. And he's explaining this whole thing in this chapter. If you want to go back and study it a little more, Ezekiel 37. And this is where in Romans 11 we see this olive tree. We see the house of Israel that was completely had to be regrafted into that tree. The house of Judah, some of the branches were broken off because of unbelief, but it's becoming, again, it's showing the one nation that he's making, and it's coming to fruition today in this time in which we live. These 2 sticks or houses or trees are starting to come back into one people, one nation. And it's exciting. It's exciting to watch. And it's interesting that if you are to graft branches into an olive tree, if they're going to take that graft, they're going to graft on the 3rd day, which is interesting because it was there's a verse that says, after 2 days he will revive us, and in the 3rd day we will live in his sight. And I believe that's from Hosea. But it's fascinating because that's speaking of the millennial kingdom. And here is, if you want to go back from your family name and find an older lineage or family of crest, I think one is called House of Names, where you can see these tribes of Israel, you can see the different symbols, and you can look on your family crest. It has to be probably at least 150 years old, the ones that you're looking up, not the newer ones. But House of Names is, I think, a pretty decent one. And if you see any of these symbols in your crest, you can know that you have some lineage from these tribes. Because guess what? In Revelation, there's 12 gates into New Jerusalem, and they're the tribes. And that is the church. There is no separate one from the church who has disassociated itself from these tribes. That is the way into New Jerusalem. Okay, the Israelites went through tribulation and plagues prior to their exodus. We know that. All the way down the 10 plagues that Yah brought on that nation. All of these plagues were their gods. He brought down every one of their gods, and then he took his people out. We know that in the greater Exodus, he's going to do even greater wonders. It's known as the time of Jacob's trouble, an unprecedented crisis. There will be nothing like it, nor ever again. And the Bible says, such times as the world has never seen. And why is it called Jacob's trouble? It's because when Jacob was leaving, if you remember Laban, he stayed with Laban 20 years, and think of that as prophetically of 2,000 years, because it's been about 2,000 years since Messiah was here. And he was coming back to the land. What did he have to face? The first thing he faced was Laban. Laban came after him very angry and threatened him. And he was held back providentially from doing damage to Jacob. And then Jacob went on, and who did he meet next? 400 men with Esau who were coming to kill him. And so this again, think about the time of Jacob's trouble. And then he comes on into the land, and he comes to a city called Shechem. And his daughter Dinah, who just happens to be the 7th child, was raped there. Now think about that. The 7th child, the 7,000th year, which is the millennial kingdom, which we're on the brink of. And Dinah is a girl. I think she represents the bride. I think it's speaking of the calamities that this group of people, the remnant, are going to face in coming back to the land. It's going to be a very difficult time. But we have hope. These verses below, Jeremiah 30, 5 through 7, give us hope. For thus saith Yahweh, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. Ask now and see whether a man is ever in labor with child. So why do I see every man with his hand on his loins like a woman in labor, and all faces turned pale? Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. And it is the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So see, that's what we're just describing, the time of Jacob's trouble. We know that when the Israelites left Egypt the first time, all those who left, there were only 2 that actually entered into the land. Why? Because of their disobedience. And we're going to see that very similar thing in the greater Exodus. He is not going to allow the disobedient to enter in to the promised land. And this is shown in 2 passages here. Ezekiel 20, he says, I will take note of you as you pass under my staff or my rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will urge you of those who revolt and rebel against me, although I bring them out of the land where they are living, yet they will not enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahweh. And then Hosea 10:22, only a remnant will return, even though they were of the sand of the sea. Though your people be like the sand of the sea, Israel, only a remnant will return. Destruction has been decreed, overwhelming and righteous. So we need to pray that we will be counted worthy to escape all that's coming on this world. That was one of the prayers that Messiah told his people to pray. So we know that in the first Exodus, Pharaoh, after the 10th plague and the death of the firstborn, it says, Exodus 12:31, during the night Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, up, leave my people, you and the Israelites, go, worship the Lord as you have requested. We know it in the second greater Exodus, they will suffer loss, but Jeremiah promises that they will be saved. It says, even though that day is great, nothing like we've seen before, it will not be the end of Jacob. And then it says, therefore do not fear, O my servant Jacob, saith Yahweh, nor be dismayed, O Israel. For behold, I will save you from afar, and your seed from the land of their captivity. Jacob shall return and have rest and quiet, and none shall make him afraid. For I am with you, saith Yahweh, to save you. Though I will make a full end of the nations where I have scattered you, yet I will not make a complete end of you. But I will correct you in justice, and I will not let you go altogether unpunished. That's Jeremiah 38 through 11. And on down, Amos 9:13 to 15. Behold, the days are coming, saith the Yahweh, when the plowman shall overtake the reaper, the treader of grapes, him who sows seed. The mountains shall drip with sweet wine, and all the hills flow with it. I will bring back the captives of my people Israel. Do you see this is all over the Bible? You just can't miss this. They shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them. They shall also make gardens and eat fruit from them. I will plant them in their land, and they shall no longer be pulled up from the land I have given them, saith the Yahweh, your Elohim. Ezekiel 36, 8 through 12. The land will produce abundantly. The people will multiply, and old cities will be rebuilt. It's going to be an incredible time in the millennial kingdom. Now, we know that the Israelites began strong in the beginning. They had great leaders, Moses, Aaron, and Joshua. But over the years, after King David, their leadership began to go down, down, down until their sin brought them into captivity. In the greater Exodus, we will also have eternally great leaders. We know that there will be the resurrection because Abraham is going to be, and we see the recording in Matthew that he will be at that feast, the wedding feast, along with all these others that will be resurrected, these saints of old. King David will rule the house of Israel, and King David likely refers to the Messiah from Ezekiel 37, 24 and 25. And David my servant shall be king over them, and they shall have one shepherd, and they shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. We know also Matthew 19:28 and Luke 22:30 say that the 12 apostles will be resurrected at that time, and they're going to sit as judges over the 12 tribes, ensuring that proper judgment is given to the nations. So, amazing time. Now, in the beginning, in ancient Israel, when Ephraim spoke, the people trembled. Ephraim was exalted. He was well respected. But he became guilty of Baal worship, and he died. You know, when I showed the family crest just a minute ago, one of the symbols of the tribe of Ephraim is a bull, and you're going to see that over here in just a second. And just speaking of those family crests, like for my name, for instance, my maiden name is Emmanuel, of the tribe of Judah. Well, the tribe of Judah is the lion. And on my family crest, we have both the line of Judah from the line of Pharez and the line of Zerah. It's the red and the yellow. And now in the greater Exodus, Ephraim is going to resume his place. He will repent sincerely. And if you read these verses that I'm getting ready to read to you here, just let this sound to you like what I believe it is. It's the repentance of the prodigal son, Ephraim coming home. And this is what's happening today. And you know that they were told by the prophets that if they didn't repent, that their judgment would be multiplied 7 times. And there are those who have multiplied that out. And they say that we come to the year around 2008 or 2009. And that's when the curse was lifted upon these 10 tribes, and they began to have their spiritual eyes open to what's going on prophetically, and the regathering and the understanding of the ancient past. Jeremiah 31, 18 through 20. This is what Ephraim says: you have chastised me, and I was chastised like an untrained bull. Well, guess what? The bull is the symbol of Ephraim. Restore me, and I will return. For you are Yahweh my Elohim. Surely after my turning I repented, and after I was instructed I struck myself on the thigh. I was ashamed, yes, even humiliated, because I bore the reproach of my youth. In the second greater Exodus, Nehemiah 1:9 says, if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, those of you who have been scattered were in the most remote parts of the heaven, I will gather you from there, and I will bring them to the place where I have chosen to cause my name to dwell. And guess where that is? That is Jerusalem. That's where his name dwells. This is another one that you can read on your own. I did not highlight anything, but there's great information on all of these. A second one as well. Now, we know that in the first Exodus, Israel was married to God at Mount Sinai. They were betrothed. And how do we know that? Isaiah 54:5 tells us, and we've already talked a little bit about that earlier, but Isaiah 54:5 says, "For your husband is your maker. The Lord of hosts is his name, Yahweh of hosts. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth." Here's a second place where he calls them. He says, "I'm your husband." Jeremiah 3:14, "Return, faithless people, declares Yahweh, for I'm your husband. I will choose you, one from a town and two from a clan or a city, and bring you to Zion." Do you see this? The remnant. It's not many people, but there will be a few people gathered out of the nations of the world. And the 21st century nations are going to have a sort of remarriage or a consummation of this marriage to the Most High. Israel will be comforted. They will be given hope, and they will finally call him my husband. That's what Hosea is about. Remember the whole story of the adulterous wife that Hosea had, and how they were finally, in the end, he said, "You will no longer call me you will call me you will call me husband." I think it's Ishi is the word. You will no longer call me Baali, which is Baal, but you will call me Ishi. In those days and at that time, and again, in those days, always speaking of the last days, the final days before his return, declares the Yahweh, the people of Israel and the people of Judah. Notice again, both people, two different people, not just one, not just what's in the land. It's a small little people that are there now, and that land is going to be a much greater land. What Abraham was promised has never come to fruition. They will go together in tears to seek Yahweh, their Elohim. That's Jeremiah 54. They will go through Jacob's trouble. They will be attacked. They will be taken captive, but they're going to give a witness of the gospel to the world. Jeremiah 50:33 and 34. The people of Israel are oppressed, the people of Judah as well. All their captors hold them fast, refusing to let them go. Yet the Redeemer is strong. Yahweh Almighty is his name. He will vigorously defend their cause so that he may bring rest to the land, but unrest to those who live in Babylon. And Babylon is that world system, that world government that's being set up today. At that time, I will gather you. At that time, I will bring you home. I will give you honor and praise among all the peoples of the earth when I restore your fortunes before your very eyes. Zephaniah 3:20. Well, if your fortunes are going to be restored, then they have to be lost. And you remember Messiah said those who've lost lands and houses will be restored over 100 times. This is coming. This is a time that's going to be a very difficult time for the Father's people. We know that when they left in the first Exodus, foreigners left with Israel. And these people, the foreigners, the aliens, whatever you want to say, the Egyptians and other nations that were there, they were required to keep the Torah too. And we know that in the greater Exodus, people from different nations will join Israel. And Exodus 12:38 tells us many other people went up with them, also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. And he says, but you must keep my decrees and my laws. The native born and the foreigners residing among you must not do any of the abominable and detestable things. It's not written all down here. But he's basically telling you that this was what was required in the first Exodus and also the second Exodus, the same. Isaiah 14:1. This is a future event. Yahweh will have compassion on Jacob. Once again, he will choose Israel, and he will settle them in their own land. Aliens. Aliens are strangers. Aliens are Gentiles, nations, foreigners. And by the way, Gentile means out of covenant. You don't want to stay in the nations because you're out of covenant as a Gentile. You want to be grafted into the people of the covenant. But it says aliens will join them and unite with the house of Jacob. That is what is coming at the future time. And in the second greater Exodus, Psalm 147:2 says, Yahweh builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the outcast of Yasharel. And why is it called Yasharel instead of Israel? Some people believe this was the original name given was Yashar, which means the upright of Yah. Yasharel. And El, of course, is Elohim, the upright of God or Elohim. Ezekiel 20:34, I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you from the lands where you are scattered with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with wrath poured out. So we know that rebels did not enter the land in the first Exodus. We've already said that, but to reiterate it again, the only two that were from the original group that 40 years that they wandered were Joshua and Caleb. And in the second greater Exodus is going to be similar. He's not going to allow the rebels to enter. Ezekiel 20:37-38. It says, just as I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness in the land of Egypt, so I will enter into judgment with you, declares the Yahweh Elohim. And I want to stop there and comment on, if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, you will see all of the rebellion, well, a lot of the rebellion that took place during the wilderness travels of the first Exodus, and how they grumbled and they complained and they rebelled, and it was just a constant listing over and over. They rejected the land, they despised the land that Yah had given them, they did not trust him, and on and on and on. And so at the end of that chapter, it says, all these things, that means all these things that you just read that they went through, were written for those on whom the ends of the world fall. There again, that's this group of people, this remnant. It's written for this remnant of people so that they will not make those same errors. I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. I will purge you of those who rebel and transgress against me. I will bring them out of the land in which they dwell, but they will not enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahweh. Now, Isaiah 56:6-7, I want to read a little more than what is actually there. It says, also the sons of the stranger, what did we say stranger is? Alien, goyim, those of the nations, those who don't have the blood lineage of Israelites, okay, that join themselves to Yahweh to serve him, to love the name of Yahweh, to be his servants, everyone that keepeth from polluting the Sabbath and taketh hold of my covenant. These are the two things. Keep the Sabbath and take hold of his covenants. He says, even them I will bring to my holy mountain. This is speaking of the millennial kingdom. Holy mountain is Jerusalem, the land that he's given his bride. And I will make them joyful in my house of prayer. And he goes on to say, my house will be called a house of prayer for all people. And Yahweh Elohim, which gathereth the outcast of Israel, says, yet I will gather others to him besides those that are gathered. Who are the others? The others are those we're talking about, the strangers, the aliens, the foreigners, these people that have the opportunity. This is what the Messiah died for, to give us an opportunity to become a part of these people. Now, what was the problem in the first Exodus? They didn't have the right heart. You know, it's interesting that the original 10 words were written on stone, because I think it's so reflective that that was what their hearts were, hearts of stone. And Deuteronomy 5:29, these are the words of the Most High. He says, the people that could not truly love, as Elohim exclaims, oh, that day Israel had such a heart in them that they would fear me and always keep my commandments, that it might be well with them and their children forever. This is Deuteronomy 5:29. So, what happened to change that? It's the new covenant. that was Messiah came to bring. And we've partly got it, but I think when he returns, he says he's going to sprinkle clean water on us, and we will be living in that covenant completely. But he says, I will give you a new heart of flesh. This is all explained in Ezekiel 36 and Jeremiah 31. This is the new covenant. It's the same covenant, but it goes from stone to your flesh, to your heart. And here's what he says. I will gather you, there again, gather you from the peoples, assemble you from the countries where you've been scattered. I will give you the land of Israel. Then I will give them one heart, and I will put a new spirit within them, and take out the stony heart out of their flesh, and give them a heart of flesh, that they may walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. Why? So that we can walk out the commandments, to have the power to do that. And they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. But as for those whose hearts follow the desire for their detestable things and their abominations, I will recompense their deeds on their own heads, says Yahweh Elohim. Now we know that ancient Israel was to be a model nation. This is what Yah tells us in the Torah. And this is what will be said. It's not being said now, nor has it ever really been said, but it will be said at a future time. It says, see, this is Deuteronomy 4, 5, and 6. I have taught you decrees and laws as Yahweh my Elohim commanded me. This is Moshe talking, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to take possession of it. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this nation is a wise and understanding people. Now, people don't say that today about Israel, but when he comes back and sets up his kingdom, this will be said. Now, there's going to be a second chance for Israel to be that model nation, and this second time, they will be successful. Isaiah 2, 2 through 4, in this passage I'm getting ready to read, you can find this exact same passage in Micah 4, verse 2. And it says, in the last days, here we are, the mountain or the government of the house of Yahweh will be established as the chief of the mountains or governments. It will be raised above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. And many people will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we may walk in his paths. Now listen to this next part. For the Torah will go forth from Zion. Wait a minute, I thought that was done away with. Nope, he says when he comes back, it's going to go forth from Zion. He's going to teach the Torah. And the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. Then he will judge between nations and arbitrate for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will no longer take up sword against nation, nor train for war anymore. Now, ancient Israel was a terrible example. We know that's why they got divided. We know that's why they got taken into captivity. That's why all of these things came upon them. And the house of Israel, as I said, never returned because they refused to repent. And you can find the scripture where Yah says he wrote them a bill of divorcement. He absolutely divorced them. And they were sentenced 7 times over for their punishment. Now, in the 21st century nations of Israel, into the millennium, they will be the good example. It says, people shall yet come, inhabitants of many cities. The inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us continue to go and pray before Yahweh and seek the Lord of hosts. I myself will go also. Yes, many people and strong nations shall come to seek Yahweh of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before Yahweh. Zechariah 8, 20 through 23 says, in those days 10 men from every language of the nations shall grab the sleeve of a Jewish man and say, let us go with you, for we have heard that Yah is with you. Ezekiel 37, 27 to 28 says, my tabernacle shall also be with them. Indeed, I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And this is what's also said in the end of Revelation. The nations will also know that I, Yahweh, sanctify Israel when my sanctuary is in their midst forevermore. This is again talking about the two sticks. I'm not going to go through this one again, but that there's going to be one king over these two nations. And I'm going to go to the next one. I'm not going to go over anything on this one as well, but it's another one to read and understand a little more on this event. These are some scriptures, not an exhaustive list, but definitely some scriptures that mention the regathering of the second greater Exodus for your own study. And this is another one that I'm not going to go through, but for your own, if you desire deeper study, you can read this one as well. And what will the regathering look like? Well, we know that the envy, you know that, again, in the story of the prodigal son, Judah was envious when the younger son came home. So look at Isaiah 11:13, and you see the envy of Ephraim shall depart, and he was envious as well of Judah. And the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not harass Ephraim. These two are going to become one people, one remnant of people. And it is the only time in the history of the world where anything like this will happen. We know that Israel was the only nation to have lost its language and to have regained the language. This is where he says, I'm going to purge out the rebels. I'm going to cause them to pass under the rod, and they're not going to enter the land. This is Ezekiel 20 again. And Isaiah 11 and 12. Then it will happen on that day, Yahweh will again recover the second time with his hand the remnant of his people, who will remain from Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and the islands of the sea. And that can be all the nations of the world. And he will lift up a standard for the nations and assemble the banished ones from Yasharel. Again, that would be the 10 tribes, and will gather the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. This is telling you it's the second time he's going to do this. The very first slide that I read said they're not going to be talking about that first Exodus any longer. It's going to be this one. Now, when will this happen? I think Matthew 24 gives us a timeline, because if you look, he talks about all the things that are going to happen, the abomination of desolation and so on. But it says in verse 30, then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. This will be the resurrection when he comes, and he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. And you remember the trumpet shall sound and the dead will be raised. And they would, at the Feast of Trumpets, they would blow the shofar. It's really shofar, not trumpet. They would blow it 99 times, and the last blowing was known as the Great Trump, or the last trump. And they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So I believe this is when it will be at the end, when they will be regathered back to the land. Okay, and Ezekiel 38:8, after many days you will be visited. In the latter years you will come into the land of those brought back from the sword and gathered from many peoples on the mountains of Israel. And we just read brought back from the sword. Isaiah 24 says the whole earth is burned and few men left in it. There's going to be desolation and devastation upon this earth. Very few people will be left. There's another verse that says, I will make a man scarcer than gold. So most people aren't going to make it. And gathered from many people on the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate, they were brought out of the nations, and now all of them dwell safely. When will this take place? Well, when did the first Exodus take place? It was at Passover. This is a very interesting, I'm not 100% sure on this. I mean, I'm sure about what I'm showing you, but I can't be 100% sure on the timing. But my guess, where I stand today, is that this is probably the way it will be. Jeremiah 38:8, which is the same as Jeremiah 31:8 in English Bibles. But you don't see what I'm getting ready to read you in the Septuagint translation. And this is what it says. Behold, I am bringing them from the north. I will gather them from the farthest parts of the earth at the feast of Pesach. Pesach is Passover. So, if this is correct, his people, his remnant, will be gathered again at Passover. And that would, I think, explain the shadow of the first Exodus to the greater Exodus to come. And if we look on down here, Isaiah 27:13, it says, so it shall be in that day. Again, in that day is speaking of the last time. The great trumpet will be blown. They will come who are about to perish in the land of Assyria, and they who are outcast in the land of Egypt, and they shall worship Yahweh in the holy mount at Jerusalem. Okay, and it says, as Yahweh lives, who brought up and led the descendants out of the house of Israel from the north country and all the countries where I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their land. And they're no longer going to say the one who brought them up from the land of Egypt. That's not going to be the topic of conversation. It's going to be this greater Exodus, because it's going to far supersede the events that took place in the original Exodus. Now, a cry's going to be heard, and Yah's going to rescue his people and gather them to himself. The seas and the oceans are going to part to bring his people home who are repentant and humble. And the wounded of the world are going to seek the house of Israel to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're going to finally drink of the living waters and finally be filled. I love this picture. We don't need to fear, because Isaiah 43, I'm just going to read a few of these verses. Verse 5, do not fear, for I am with you. I will bring your seed from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. All those who are called by my name, whom I have created, formed, and even made for my esteem. Verse 18, do not remember the former events, nor consider the events of old. See, I am doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Do you not know it? I am even making a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. This people I have formed for myself. Let them relate my praise. Okay, we see in Revelation at the second greater Exodus, the woman, or Yasharel, fled into the wilderness where Yahweh had prepared a place for her to be nourished for 1,260 days. That's actually 3.5 years. And that's the same language that we're understanding here, that he's going to bring you into the wilderness and pass you under the rod, and he's going to deal with his people at that time. And here's Hosea speaking of the same thing. He says, therefore, I'm going to allure her. This is Hosea 2:14 and 15. I will lead her into the wilderness. Same words. And speak tenderly to her. There I will give back her vineyards and make the valley of tribulation a door of hope. I want to comment on that because some of your translations say valley of Achor. Achor is trouble, the valley of trouble, a door of hope. There she will respond as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up out of Egypt. So great will be the second greater Exodus that it will be remembered forever. Now, I don't like what's written, this last little thing, because I don't believe the other Exodus will be completely fade out. I just think it will be trumped by this greater Exodus, because it will just far supersede everything that takes place. The time will come when people swear, as Yahweh lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of the north and from all the countries where he banished them. It will be so. And a lot of this article, I want to give credit to this Jeanette Andre Jowich. And here is a prayer to pray for the return of the people of the covenant. Heavenly Father, Yahweh, please have compassion on us and bring us again to our own heritage and to our land. Please gather us from the nations where you have sent us into exile. Please bring us back to the land that you gave to our forefathers. Let us possess it, and let us be with you. And here's a beautiful song.
song not playing.
Land of milk and land of honey, land of blessing and land of curse, land that's in our hearts so dearly. The shofar will sound and we will go home.
Land of wheat and land of barley, land of hopes and land of dreams. Hear our singing the song of Moses. Shofar will sound and we will go home.
We will go home, we will go home. Shofar will sound and we will go home. We will go home, we will go home. Shofar will sound and we will go home. Land of exile and land of promise,
Land of valleys and land